Guys, it's great to be in the company of wonderful looking and exciting friends, and it's a delight. So thank you very much for joining on a Saturday morning. And I think we are in 2021, and we have achieved a lot. You see women today in a professional career. You see women in a professional courses, which are tomorrow going to take some big seats. So when Hari and I were chatting about the subject, what do we chat about this? The word empowerment came into the picture a lot, and these are my personal views. And I feel that how can you empower somebody? It's not a magic sword that you give it to someone and say, "Hey, listen, now you are empowered to doing something." What you need to really create is a equal playing field. And if you're able to do this, I think women have really achieved a lot in terms of professional education, in terms of career, workforce, that they can really be there anywhere. So you don't really need to empower them. So that's my personal viewpoint. The times were different when in the olden days when the men used to go for war, which needed a physical front. So yes, the men were more in controllable state, and then came the manufacturing, again a hard labor job. Again, the men were very much out there. But today in the service industry, which largely the India contributes into, what you need is a EQ and IQ. And I think every data suggests that the women have got a higher EQ and IQ. So it's actually the men who needs to watch out, and they need a bit of empowerment than anyone else. So that's what I feel. But what we need is to look at the lower strata of the pyramid, and that's where we need to see how we can empower a women workforce. How do we make them self-reliant? How do we make them financially independent? How do we make them self-sustainable, that they are able to get out and do things what is required by them? And the idea is that what we as corporate leaders, what we as corporate organizations can do to make that happen, and what is happening in this space, and what needs to do or should happen in the future. And so, friends, today we have an outstanding panel of leaders, I'll say, and all of them are working very, very closely in this particular space, and they are very passionate about this area. And so, allow me to introduce briefly each one of them. So, we have Neha Singh. Neha is a co-founder and CEO for Traxon. Traxon, it's known to everybody, but it's one of the firms which help VCs and investors to identify potential areas of investment, intelligence, and research. And one of the investors happens to be Mr. Ratan Tata himself. And Neha is a graduate from IIT and Stanford, and she worked at BCG Sequoia before starting Traxon. So Neha, welcome. Then we have Manmeet Sandhu. Manmeet is the Chief People Officer at PhonePe. PhonePe today employs over 1,000 people, and I've also been told they have more than 10 million transactions a month. And Manmeet's been associated with PhonePe since 2018, and she's been a brainchild to build the world-class HR organization at PhonePe. And before that, she was with Amazon at Seattle. Then we have Manmeet, welcome. Then we have then we have Ashwini Valvalkar. Ashwini is the Chief Strategy and Transformation Officer at ISS. And she's been associated with ISS for over 15 years. And ISS, as I was mentioning, employs over 60,000 employees. And Ashwini has been at the forefront to develop and implement strategy to make ISS a learning organization, and making this an employee learning lifecycle process in the ISS group. It will be great to hear her views this morning. Then we have Priyadarshini Gupta. Priyadarshini leads the diversity and inclusion at India's largest conglomerate, Tata Group. And she has over 20 years of experience. And prior, she has also been a very successfully established diversity and inclusion in companies like Mondelez, Cummins, and General Mills. And her core strength has been a deep understanding of regional and local insights of inclusion amongst underrepresented work groups. So, Priya, welcome this
My
morning.
pleasure.
Then we have Radhika Chena Keswala. Radhika is a director IT at Micron in India. And she's a customer and people focused leader with over 2 decades of experience in across IT and technical expertise. And prior Micron, she was with GE Appliances. And she was also a national committee member of NASSCOM on diversity and inclusion. And she loves outdoor and sports, which we just came down to know that she's now practicing kickboxing as well. And then we have Sandeep Kapoor. Sandeep is a founder and managing partner for Elgo Legal. Sandeep is India's one of the finest lawyers in the private equity and venture capital space. And prior to setting up Elgo Legal, he spent almost a decade with Sequoia Capital and adopted technology to transform the in-house legal team of Sequoia. And before Sequoia, he also spent time with Intel Technology and Intel Capital. It is such a pleasure to have this group today because each one of you, uh, in their own way, is contributing to this particular cause of women empowerment in a big way. And it would be a pleasure to hear from everyone on their views, on the experiences, and what needs to be done. And let me hand this over to Sandeep to moderate this conversation today. He's got some great ideas, and Sandeep, over to you. And I'll take the best seat to hear this conversation and probably come towards the end to thank each one of you.
Thank you, Deepak, and thank you, CEO Lounge, for just thinking and conceptualizing this beautiful topic. Because there are a lot of initiatives which are going on, but how you have structured a topic to focus the problem at the bottom of the pyramid. While all of us, when we see the places we are living in, we open the next door, and today in a community in Bangalore, everyone in a family, female representation in the workforce is there. I'm very inspired by my own wife, who has, just like me, she's a lawyer, she's a chartered secretary, and today she's heading legal function for a large company. So I have seen her journey very up close and personal, whether managing like a beast like me or taking care of our son, taking care of my father, and yet being so accomplished. So I have always been following this thing very nicely. And today, thanks to this distinguished and accomplished panel, and very nicely you have curated a panel. We have people who are doing this thing for 24/7 in form of Priya and Manmeet. They are there. And Radhika, who has been running her parallel things, but also been going deeper into the session. And Neha has epitomized that how a young analyst today can have we have shared our stories as Sequoia colleagues. I remember when she joined and had a very interesting time to go deeper into her background. And I keep sharing her story. Ankiti, another analyst from Sequoia, she has started Zilingo. Both are unicorn companies and rising at an alarming rate. And Ashni obviously is I think little bit she stands apart from the way the leadership is being manifested. So I think we are going to have very interesting session here. What we need to do, I thought that we'll just try to first understand where is the problem and what are the factors which are leading to that problem. And then sharing from each one of our experiences that what we are seeing around us, what initiatives are happening. And little bit of data sharing will go into that, because each one of you represent your organization. And I just read this morning, PhonePe is trying to get more people on the senior side from representation from the women side. And very interesting automobile stories are coming out. So we'll go a little bit into the data thing. And I think what will be the best outcome of this session is if we can identify those 2 or 3 takeaways, which we can take away into our respective sessions, or we can continue to collaborate on that. And, we can go through that. I'm not going to follow any particular pattern. Any one of you have any related point, just raise the hand and I will go through that. And I think I assured Deepak will have very nice and healthy outcome out of this session. Just a quick point with Hari. Hari, how much time we have got here?
Go for it. You have about 60 odd minutes.
60 odd minutes. Awesome. So I'll be, interjecting in between. So sorry for that. And lawyers are used to do that. Thankfully, I'm not I'm a corporate lawyer, not a litigating lawyer. So you guys will have a very interesting time. So Ashni, let's start with you. When we say empowering women at the lower of the pyramid, what exactly is your realization, or what exactly is the problem that you have seen? So, it will be good to first reach to that problem between 2 or 3 discussions.
Thank you, Sandeep. And firstly, I think I should thank Hari and Deepak, for bringing up this topic, which I think has been there since existence. I don't think it is something which has come up now. So it has been for a long time. We have various forums and we have various laws and reforms, for women. But when it comes to executing it, we are way behind, and it's a long way that we have to work on. Women equality, I think, has been a serious concern. I think it may be an urban or a rural. It has always been a concern. But here, typically, now that we are going to talk about, the women at the bottom of the pyramid, and I think we are some of the fortunate ones here on this panel, or someone who are listening, who have got, education and I think those freedom, or rather empowerment, that we can bring up this topic and we can discuss this freely. When you talk about, where the problem lies, so as already Deepak mentioned, we are an organization, have been associated with ISS for over 2 decades now. This organization has been, working very closely with the bottom of the pyramid by the sheer business that we are into. So being into the facility management business, we have a huge workforce of 60,000 employees, but still I would say we are only 15 to 18% where we have women employment. And we are rather, very focused on how we could increase this number to almost doubling up. Now, the first, and I think all my panelists here would agree with me, is that education plays a very important role when it comes to these challenges. But when we come to education, we are in a country right now where maybe having a girl child is still a thought, in some of the places in our country. Do we have a girl child? Or it comes to, as soon as she comes into her teens, how do we get her married? And, and we have been embedded with the thoughts right from our mothers or grandmothers, that women are supposed to take care of the household and they are supposed to do the houseworks and, continue with the family. So education definitely plays an important role because, like we say, if a girl gets educated, the entire family and the society gets educated. That's definitely the right thought. But I feel that for making them empowered right now, we also need to give them a livelihood, giving them jobs. Now, maybe giving them education, it would be something which we all want. Every girl should get educated, but maybe that may not be possible immediately in the near future, looking at some of the challenges that we have. So can we give them a respectable and a decent employment like we are trying to do it in our own organization? When you give employment, first is a lady becomes economically and socially independent. When she becomes independent, and not dependent any longer on the livelihood of her daily things, she can think and influence her family at least, where she can then talk about equality or at least respect and teaching her own kids, especially the daughters, because she then understands once she's out of the house, she understands the importance of having education. Because sometimes, Sandeep, I really feel that women at that strata are empowerment is a long subject, I think for now, but for them even to know that they are empowered, they can do it, they are capable of doing it, that thought process also is lacking somewhere. So can we bring in that thought process in them is something through employment is something I think at the start we can talk about.
I think that's a very, very interesting, background set by you, Ashni. Thank you for that. And I think 2, 3 things which are coming up, which we will discuss a little later, is empowerment through education, jobs, and there are many other factors which can be catalyst in this empowerment as a thing. But I think let's just go back to the grassroots level problem, right? When we are saying that empowerment at the lower of the pyramid, Manmeet, in your experience, when all these initiatives are on, what could be the factor which is not letting them go? We can think of social factor or unconscious bias, and I'll speak about it a little later. But what is your experience that why, when such an awareness is coming, is it that awareness at grassroots level is not there, or there are too many impediments? So what is your view on that?
Yes, of course. There is clearly that element of the power structures that exist and the patriarchal elements that make it harder for individuals to succeed, men and women frequently, depending on what roles that they're playing. I think there is definitely a very, very strong component of your women feeling limited by the environment that they're in and what they feel like they are allowed to do. I was thinking about examples that I had recently come across where maybe women are in fact able to break through some of those barriers, and I realized that one of the things that seem to have contributed most is that ability to work within a network of women. I was thinking about self-help groups. I was thinking about a bunch of work that various different organizations, NGOs have done in kind of creating communities of women who are empowered. So if you're going into a village and trying to do something, you're sort of getting a bunch of them together. So they can kind of use the strength of each other and support of each other to take themselves forward. So it's not a question of my husband's not letting me do this, or I'm not allowed to move forward on this, because you have kind of created that support group for a group of people so that they can kind of move forward on things. I think a very important component, which also comes in the same situation, is the need for money management capability. It's not enough. We have, I mean, enough examples of situations where even educated women, for that matter, but you might be in fairly good positions as far as the money, the roles that you're being paid for is, but then you don't have control over those funds. You come back, you hand it over to somebody else who decides whatever they want to do with it. We've had Britney Spears, very famous example, very, very recently in that case. So I think that capability of also saying that I can figure out how best this money can be leveraged. In fact, having that education and enablement where it's not just the money that you're earning, but potentially the family's money that you're figuring out how to leverage much, much more effectively, then also helps create that sense of respect and therefore moves you towards empowerment. So in my mind, two things, if you have to kind of think about, that could help. One, more of those community-based initiatives that let people use other people as support. And secondly, a better understanding of how money can be used so you can add value even within your immediate environment.
No, thank you. I think both the initiatives. I think there are 3-4 others. So we'll talk. But Priya, let's just go to you. And first of all, congratulations. I think your organization. I've been reading about it, doing tremendous work here. Now let's take the first initiative, community-based initiative that Manmeet just brought into discussion. So it will be good to know from you that I'm sure that these initiatives are custom made after understanding the problems and getting data at the grassroots level from various places. So if you can quickly touch upon 2 or 3 initiatives and how they were designed. We'll go to the last mile that what effect is coming, but what was kept in mind while designing those initiatives is something I'm always very intrigued, because when we are trying to participate or handhold with few NGOs, the first question is coming is what is happening at the last level and how these programs are designed. So I think few insights from you would be super helpful.
Thanks, Sandeep. So I'll actually step back a little bit. When we're talking about empowerment at the bottom of the pyramid, we're actually talking about intersectionality. Intersectionality is when, in layman's term, it is a double whammy, right? You are a woman and you belong to a marginalized segment of society, right? So hence, exclusion becomes larger for you, right? So we are dealing with 2 levels of, I would say, barriers when you are working with women at the bottom of the pyramid. So it becomes even more difficult and even more, you need a lot more structural work in order to break those barriers. That's one. Secondly, yes, education does help. But to me, I think what has stood out, and I will not only say this with my work in the Tatas, with my work at Cummins, at Mondelez, with all these are companies where I've worked on the shop floor. RPG, I've worked with women on the shop floor. CA Tires, right? They're amazing. And I worked with women at a leadership level. Surprisingly, the drive in the women at the bottom level is way beyond the drive that is there in the middle or the upper part of the pyramid. And that's probably because we are privileged. We know if we get back to a comfort zone, it's not that killing. But for a girl who comes from where she'll be sent into marriage if she does not take up a job, or that's something that she needs to kind of deal with, her drive to achieve something is way more. So I think the drive is there. It is about upskilling. Yes, of course, education, but sometimes even education, I think I would put actually upskilling beyond education. When I look back at Mondelez, and when we started the Sri City factory, which is 50% women on the shop floor, we actually picked up plus 10 plus graduates, people who just passed class 10, and we upskilled them through a formal training program, which was 2 years. So we took them through the entire capability building, upskilled them, and made them employability, increase their employability. So I think that is something that is very, very critical. And if you're able to touch upon that, I think because the drive is higher in that segment, the stories, or the inspirational stories, are way more than when we look at the middle or the level beyond the middle going up. In terms of programs and coming to Tata's, I think we work with this particular level in various segments. We have 10 industry segments. We have women in the mines. We have women on the shop floor at Tassel. We have women working on Starbucks, right? We have all women stores in Starbucks, which is one of the first all over the globe. Right. And that's a tough one, because having women to work in that segment of, fast cafe retail is a tough one. Right. But we have that. We just started an all women's hotel in Chennai.
Wow.
Right. Where we have women starting from operations down to the manager. We have everybody as women. So what of course, there is, we do feel that there is, we want to do it and there is merit in it, and I don't want to get there. But I think structured programs of upskilling and capability building, which are focused around mentoring, which are focused around support groups, as Manmeet rightly said, because it is very important for them to see role models that I can reach there. Interestingly, there is a girl, who is heading one of the Starbucks stores in Delhi, and she comes from a family where she's the first person who got education, and today she runs the store. So, and she also supports her whole family. So again, going back to what Ashwini said, it's about seeing and creating those role models that the other women can see, other young girls, can see at a school level, so that they don't drop out from school, so that they at least complete that class 10, so that they at least get into an ITI. We even have like Tassel that, at Hyderabad, we have upskilling and training for young girls to be able to build their capabilities to move into the shop floor. So I think very structured capability building, mentoring, role modeling to them, as well as working with families. I think that is a very, very important part, because you need to give that comfort level to the families that they are coming into a safe space, whether it's a night shift, whether it's a day shift, whether the shift makes them to work till 12 at night, whatever it is. And family connects. And this is not only from my Tata experience when I go back to Mondelez and when I go back to Cummins, connects with families, strong connect with families, helps us to retain the women at that level. So I think that works, and that helps in breaking the socio-cultural bit around women coming into work or coming out to work, whichever way you want to take on. So I think that is another big piece of work that's an interesting and very important part of supporting them. The last thing that I will talk about is, and this is something which we did very well at Cummins, Cummins didn't have engineers, right? I mean, it's an engineering company that we still struggle with engineers. I don't think there are engineers. Women engineers, everyone wants to go into IT. No one wants to go and work on the shop floor, but you want women on the shop floor. I know there are stories, but we need many more. We started Cummins College of Engineering,
Wow.
right? And that was the answer to have more engineers. 60% of those women engineers were then taken into Cummins, right? I think more such stories need to come up.
Yeah.
We need more ITIs. We need more companies coming out and saying that, let's get this for women, and let's create I don't know, maybe a training or a school just to train women to get into the hospitality industry. I don't know.
Yeah. So I think what I will do is, because this is a segment which is very interesting, and I would like to come to what we can do more, because
I'll hold my guns over here now.
Yes, absolutely.
This is a topic I can go on talking, so I'll just
Absolutely.
keep quiet. That's all from me now.
So you gave very good clue for two engineers and IT people we have here, Radhika and Neha. So I will pose a open question. What is their respective experience? Maybe Radhika can go first and Neha can chime in later, in terms of looking at the engineers at a grassroots level and why the representation is so minuscule. If you see the data, I would say now things are moving up, but when we say assembly lines, or when we talk about blue collar job, we just today, even when we're talking about empowerment, we are just restricting taking them employed in a skill set which is not very intellectual. So why there is, of course, there is, as Priya, Manmeet, Ashwini said, that a lot of issues are at grassroots level, but our programs are also saying just upskill. But this a common story of starting an engineering only college. So what is your experience, respective experience, why there is not enough representation in higher skills also, or at an upper level also?
Sure. Neha, okay, nicely Neha unmuted, so I'll go first. So first of all, one aspect which I wanted to pile upon what Priya said is not having enough role models, or not seeing enough role models, is one of the biggest aspect when it comes to engineering or tech sector, right? I can tell you, I'll share a little bit of my personal story, because adding to another aspect which Priya quoted about the drive thing, right? I come from a small remote village near Nizamabad district, where all that we had was only schooling, right? And I didn't know what to do next. I have not seen anybody do anything different, right? Now what do I aspire for? Nobody ever told me there is something called engineering, right? So I don't know what to do next. My father never educated himself, so he's not somebody who could guide me. All that he told me. Only thing is, when it comes to some of these places, what happens is, if you're a good resource, you will be allowed to do anything, right? I was lucky on that aspect, that I never had this challenges of, hey, you're a girl, don't do this, was not there. Just I was lucky in that aspect, as an exception for letting me do whatever that I want to do. Now I don't even know what to do, right? So one big aspect that I think we need to start hitting when it comes to the bottom of the pyramid was showing enough role models and telling girls to dream around this STEM and engineering and technology aspects. Now, coming back to the drive, once somebody puts this little seed on these girls, let me tell you, it drives crazy, right? For me, somebody said, hey, go and do this polytechnic. I'm like, no, okay, somebody told me to do something. Now I go and join polytechnic. And I come out, now I don't know what to do next, right? Economically not well enough to go into an engineering. Now I again hit the roadblock. That's when I was 17 and my marriage was settled, right? And I was supposed to get married at 17. So Sandeep, when I was looking at Hari's notes, I'm like, yeah, such a big number of girls are getting married less than 18, and I would have been one among them. And again, I took a courage, and I said, I'm not getting married. Now I don't know what to do. And then that's when I kind of, again, got lucky with people around supporting, saying, okay, now you want to do some computer course, this new box has come in, and then now that makes a good career for you. Okay, now somebody told me to go and learn this. I went in. Point I'm saying is, just put that little seed, show that little direction. I think after that, these girls will figure out what to do next. Then it becomes kind of an autopilot. Finally, I got married when I was 23 of my choice. But then, if just when I look back, if I would have not had that small little support, right, I would have gone into that that cycle of getting married and getting into a cycle. So I think as corporates, while we need to continue to do all these programs, it is also important that show these role models. So one big thing on that aspect that we as Micron doing is we have, I wouldn't say we have a lot of engineers, but then we have good number of engineers, engineering leaders. So we keep going to these colleges and schools and then telling them our personal stories, right? Telling them to, first of all, make them realize that it is possible. You as a girl don't have to pick the career only in banking or some of these. You can also pick these engineering careers. And these are not like, you're not going to lift bricks and concrete every day, right? You have jobs which you can still do with all your physical and emotional ability, right? Now, having said that, again, numbers are relatively better to Priya's point in terms of IT, right? Because again, entry level 30+%, and then again, even if you go up the ladder, it's not bad, but engineering is still a challenge. We find it challenging. I think 18% is what is engineering entry level. Now, the question is, that's where I keep spending little time in researching, and I don't have a right answer, right? Because if you look at our engineering colleges, close to 50% engineers come out. And I'm sure all of you are aware, we are one among the top countries to generate, we are the number one country to generate women engineers, right? And our number of employability of engineers goes to 19. Right? I'm like, which means there's a gap, and it's not just corporate gap, it's a societal gap too, right? Now, if you spend a little more time clicking down on that 1 to 19, where is the drop? One is definitely as corporates, I think we have to do more commitment to Priya's point about driving more colleges or hitting more colleges. To tell you, this year, my new college grads recruiting, I have recruited 70% women from the colleges. We have to induct, right? Again, now you like it, not like it, criticism, we take all that. But then if you don't do that, how do you move the needle from 19 to 1? It's a big gap, right? That's one thing. And second aspect of societal aspect is, again, right after this engineering, I was spending some time looking at dropouts who are not joining after this. If people are getting into post-graduation, great story, love it. I'm really happy for you. If not, they're getting into this marriage cycle. Right. So I think, again, that's where I think our intervention early into colleges, not just at the recruitment, right? Early into colleges, showing them the career path, I think that would be critical. So net, I think in my mind, when it comes to engineering, it's not as much a skill or economy. All of those are important factors, but I think showing the role models and putting that little seed is so critical. That's my point of view.
Neha, would love to see. I've heard your story up close and personal, got the benefit, but I think and Radhika, huge inspiration when we call the panelists and we actually hear their story, what they have gone through, and definitely where you are today, and it has clearly I have my cousins who got married at the age of 17, 18, and as a brother, we used to say, why don't you say no? And even if I'm trying to talk, I come from a village family in Punjab, and there, if you even want to say as a young cousin that this is not right, nobody even listens to you. But to have that courage and say no, I think that is great. But Neha, start with the story. I think it is very interesting for the people on this group to understand your story and how today you have created a unicorn and the problems you went through, because I remember some of those problems we have discussed, but I think it will be interesting to know your perspective.
Right. No, firstly, I think everyone has sort of brought about a lot of interesting points. So for instance, I grew up in Bombay, very academic environment. So at that time, everything was same because I think I used to stay in BARC, wherein half the people were scientists. So my dad was also a nuclear scientist. So at that time, there was a lot of focus on education. Everything was the same. I think the people which were coming first, second, a mix of boys and girls, right? The next thing is obviously when you go to IIT, then the ratio changes, right? So there you have 30 girls on a 500, so that's like 6%. You have one girls hostel and you have 10 boys hostel. So that's the first time that you see a very skewed ratio of people of girls actually. And then obviously, as you go into professionally, I think right now companies are taking very conscious call that, there should be diversity, even in hiring. So then, there the ratios is better. Even if you go to, for instance, like in the US universities like Stanford, there is a ratio that they try to maintain. So even in the funneling, they take that into criteria. So I think it gets better over there. But then again, when you look at senior women, women in senior VP positions or CXO positions, there again, it's very less. Like even if you look at VCs in India, right, the number of female partners in India is like very minuscule. You can probably count it in one hand. It's that less. So then again, when you look at females in senior position, that number again becomes very, very less. So I think there are a couple of things which probably would help. And I think for instance, like Radhika had also mentioned, just having role models. I think that is very inspirational for people, because just to see that what's the glass ceiling, is there a glass ceiling, right? Can you run a large team, right? Just having so many examples, I think that is like super helpful. So for instance, someone like an Indra Nui, or if you go look at Sheryl Sandberg, or recently you would have seen the Bumble IPO happening when the CEO was carrying her kid, which was amazing. That so that is one of the things, that just having these role models talking about the story, that is inspiration. Because I think people in women in professional are always wondering that are they giving enough justice to their family, right? Are they able to give enough time to their family when they are also running senior, when they are also having senior positions in the organization? When they have more responsibilities, there might be sort of more exceptions, right? So I think that is one really great point of just talking about more of these role models and having them talk about more of their stories, right? That is one. I think the second thing is that as you are in a company, or as you're running a company, I think there are a few elements which sort of I've seen dissuade, or which are a little bit of a nuisance factor when females are working in a professional setup, right? So one is basically, as a company, you have to provide a very safe professional. So obviously India has very good POSH policy. Every company is supposed to have it. So any issue that happens, the company is very supportive to females. I think that is super helpful. The second thing, there are a few issues. For instance, when people go on a maternity break, right? So that's sometimes a time wherein people actually take 1 to 2 years off, right? So how do you basically make the transition smoother, right? If you look at US, actually US probably has just about like 2 weeks of maternity break, which is I think a pretty difficult as a professional career. So some of my friends, in fact, in US have actually taken a break, whereas in India, actually you get on a positive side, you actually get like longer maternity break, right? So you can actually take a break, you can be working, and then as an organization, how do you make sure that when people are coming back, then they can ramp up slowly? So in fact, like we had one of our AVPs who just came back from the maternity break, and then obviously they have a team to run, right? So how do you basically make sure as an organization that the transition is smoother, so that there's some flexibility that they might need in their schedule, that you as a company are able to provide, so that the gaps, all these hitches, which otherwise might just expand over time, how do you basically smoothen those out?
Absolutely. I think very well said. And I think that's the next segment we are going to go. Let's say empowerment as a topic. And I would like to know from each one of you, empowerment, what are the factors through this empowerment is being practiced in your respective organization, and what more can be done at a macro level? Just to give you an example, when we are hiring, we are a young law firm, 18 months old. One factor we see very clearly is hiring from tier 3, tier 4 law schools. And, because we have a very strong program of onboarding these lawyers and putting them into, quick trainings and making sure that we are watching how they are progressing. And very happy to say 65% plus workforce are women employees, or, women colleagues we have got here, which is a very good factor. And it has made my life very easy, because, the efficiencies, because everyone has work-life balance is very important in our ethos. So things move very quickly. So just by sharing this example, I think what will be good to know is, and we'll go to Priya first. Sorry, because I had to cut you, because this is an interesting segment. So empowerment, what are the factors like education, upskilling, finances? Manmeet said control on financial things. But what during the ongoing work environment is happening through which we are spreading the message of empowerment? I think that's a very interesting topic. I keep thinking through on the specific examples, and if we can give 1 or 2 examples, what we have seen in the ecosystem or what we are practicing, I think that would be great.
Okay, so I was on a panel yesterday, and Anjali Bansal was there. And she said a very interesting thing. She said there is no use of trying to do an equal workspace if there is no equal home space. And I think that is the crux of it all. We can have immense amount of work happening on in organizations through unconscious bias, through empowerment, through social networks, through all of it. But till that home space becomes a 50-50 and equal partnership, we will still struggle with it at the workspace. Nevertheless, saying that we do work, I think there is you need to have make an effort to create that 50-50, whether it is at home or it is at work. So there are various ways in which you can empower. And again, I think when you say talk about empowering women, I think it is also about helping the men to understand the differences that are happening today. It's not easy for men. I have friends who have always seen their mothers and sisters at home taking care of people as the primary care giver. Even most women think that they are the primary caregiver, and hence they need to prioritize home over work. But it's a social construct. It is in our minds. So it is about breaking those. And that's probably one of the most difficult change that we can drive, but the most critical one to create the empowerment. And hence, the more you talk about it, it helps in terms of, maybe sessions on unconscious bias, sessions on how you can look at gender roles in different ways, right? But conversations are one part of it. I think it is the need to, you need to kind of go beyond conversations to create that change, which actually means disturbing the apple cart in many ways. And many organizations shy away from that and say that, we'd rather go with very non-committal, yes, we will do check in the box, sensitization kar diya, bahut sare kar diye, unconscious bias workshop ho gaya. Have we changed? No, we still haven't changed. I still come into, I still, when Hari sent me, Deepak sent me, one of Hari or Deepak sent me a lot of sessions that have happened on CEO Lounge to just understand what y'all are doing. One thing that struck out to me that in the CEO Lounge, the panelists, there were just no women. I think there were 2 or 3 women in all the collaterals that he sent me, and today we're talking of women empowerment. You have all women. We need men on this panel, right? So the conversation, yeah, of course, you're a moderator, but we want men to talk about the changes that they need to do also. It is a double, it can't happen. Men as allies, we need to work together, right? And workshops and sensitizations, though are important and critical starting points, cannot be the only thing to drive this social change of empowerment. Empowerment is much larger than what organizations can do. Secondly, the government plays an important role by putting out laws, because that's the way you kind of, for example, when there were no women on the boards, there was an amendment, the 2013 Act, and then we do see a movement from 4 to 16%. We've seen it happen in Norway, where there is a movement, right? But also look at the kind of laws, and this is, I'm going to say, a fairly controversial piece of thing, right? And people may not agree, which is absolutely fine. That's the whole idea of it, is we moved from 3 months to 6 months, and US actually has just 2 weeks. Neha, you mentioned that, right? What if we looked at a space which actually, so physically, actually, I'm a mother, right? And in a month's time, you are ready to get back to work. Let me tell you, a boss is much easier to handle than a little child is, right? So you're ready to go back to work. What if if the amendment on the Maternity Act actually made 1 month maternity, right? And actually gave child leave, which either parents could take, a man or a woman can take. That's when you're driving equality and empowerment, not by making it 6 months. You're actually making it very difficult for the woman to come back to work. It's damn tough to come back after 6 months. By then you've got into the comfort zone because we don't need the drive, right? Most often we are the second bread earners, and that's what we are conditioned to. Hannah, there is another income coming in. Na? So I will take care of family now. I'll take a break for 1 year. But 1 year goes and that's it gone. Radhika, I think you spoke a bit of it. The gap increases. We have 19% of engineers and employed. I mean, see that gap. So to me, I think it's important to have those conversations, capability building sessions, workshops, policies. But I think the issue is much larger than that. It needs to be a combination of very progressive laws and men and women ready to move out of their comfort zones to be able to create empowerment for both men and women, not only for women. And that's all I would say.
No, thank you, Priya. Two very interesting points. This 2013 amendment came in, data has gone up, but the non-compliance rate is still very high. When the survey was done by SEBI and the Department of Company Affairs, the non-compliance rate, and I exactly know people coming to us asking for advice how to defeat this provision also.
And after the after the Maternity Benefit Act got increased to 6 months, there has been a steady decline of women in workforce.
Absolutely. And
so where are we going with all of this is my question.
Absolutely. And we have, without naming the companies, very venture capitalists, and especially at a startup stage, them coming in and asking us, clearly that how to give 6 months also or 3 months also, because we are a young startup, it is impacting our thing. But I think provisions like giving options, both the sides coming in their flexi work environment, those things can work. But let's just quickly go to Ashwini, because I want to understand one point from Ashwini in terms of what specific programs you have seen, because I still want to go to the grassroots level. Like, issues are clear, but I want to, I think it is very interesting to talk about those specific programs at your organization level, or you have seen or worked with an NGO. But what is the result coming in? Because this data which Priya and I am saying that law changed, but non-compliance, right? So maybe let's talk about the program and the effectiveness of those programs.
It was great hearing, with all my colleagues on this panel and their inspirational journeys, like Neha said or Radhika said. Again, coming back to our grassroots level, because we are there at the, where the actual pyramid, bottom of the pyramids are, and we are working very, very closely with them. The important thing is, the change of mindset. So I'll give you one more example here is that whenever a woman wants to work, okay, it's more of the back office work that they are looked at. So if it's an HR, you will see more of ladies. If it's finance, more of ladies, or secretarial jobs. When it comes to actual operations, where like Priya said, on the ground or on the floor jobs, which are more of operational related, the women's are not there. And this was one of our focus areas, because our operations, because 90% of our workforce is on the site, on the client premises. And having ladies there was very, very important, because, and then we have to change the mindset first of our own employees, because when my operations head or the operations manager are already thinking in their mind, no, Ashwini, the ladies cannot work there. And I'm like, why have the ladies said they cannot work there? No, it's our mindset that we have decided they cannot work because it is in 3 shifts, or it is going to be a remote location, or it's going to be a tough job, which a lady cannot do. And I said, let the ladies say no. Have we gone to the ladies and spoken to them, which we have not done that. Second important thing is that, training this women, to make them capable, their skill, to do this job, because like we said, if we train them, if they are ready to do it, they are actually, on the ground where they come from such a big struggle, like I heard the struggle of Radhika. It's really inspirational. But if you allow me a minute, I want to go back and talk about a story which has really I think she's a role model for so many of those women who can talk, because I can be a role model and I talking to those workforce will not connect at somehow, because my struggle versus their struggle would be totally different. So we had a lady in one of our prime location where she came, of course, from a slum area, and she used to not come for a second shift duty, and she was asked question by her supervisor, and they wanted that she should be removed because she's not doing a second shift job. And somehow this topic came to me, and I was speaking to this lady, and I asked her, what is the reason that you're not doing it? And she told me she didn't have a husband. Okay, he had expired, and she had 3 kids. The eldest kid was 5 year old. Okay, the second was third, and another one was 1.5 year old. And she had to leave them at the home, okay, which would be some small place that she was staying, and lock the 3 kids. And the 5 year old kid had to take care of the other 2 kids. Okay, and then she could come to work. And if she doesn't go back, because she will cook in the morning, but what happens about the milk for the child and all those things. I mean, that story really touched me, because it was unimaginable for why she couldn't come to work. And for a man to understand this would be really difficult. But then we made her a role model. Whenever people wanted to exit and they thought that they cannot, I mean, the women cannot do a job, because I have XYZ problem. We always told her, look at this story, and we made her a role model, because if people at that level can connect, and if that is the hard work that they are doing, why you cannot do it? So that's some of the motivational things that we are trying to do in for our people at that level. We have a policy which is called as, Suraksha policy, which is for everybody. But for a woman, that she's coming out, she's working, uh, 1 million is a very small amount for us maybe, but for at that level, if tomorrow she is not there, something happens to her, the family gets 1 million immediately in a month's time. So she is not only doing something for herself, when she is there, of course, she's taking care of the family, but in her absence also, she's taking the pride that she has, the pride. I am again inspired by what Priya said, and that is very true. I mean, the pride that those level people have when they achieve something is way beyond than what we are talking about. So them talking makes so much more, and we have to talk about these stories more often and inspire them. I mean, these are some of the things. We have lots more, but I'm just conscious of time.
No, thank you. And I think caregiver is also becoming an economic, contributor, which capability is always there. And, creating that environment, and, again, hats off how you went out of the way, because in a normal life, we don't even have time to go beyond the next layer. We say, oh, XYZ person has decided not to come for shift. The unconscious bias which we have got, oh, there must be some productivity issue, or the person is not thinking, but, taking that extra step and going and really understanding the problem, then creating an environment, I think hats off. And this Suraksha thing is so good. While it's a small amount, but from the mindset of woman who is out, she's contributing and going back and giving a protection to the family also. I think those things go a long way. Radhika, let's share your stories if you have, particular programs you have seen. And again, one thing, my only complaint is that these 2-3 stories which are coming in, why it is not getting spread all around, right? I just feel that writing one article in the paper that certain force of women member will be increased more, or anytime global expat CEOs coming into country head on Amazon and saying that we will invest so much more. I think these small stories need to come out more, and there should be some possible medium. And maybe this is what one takeaway for CEO Lounge is, to create more white papers and stories like this which can resonate. Because if a person who is sitting and thinking the doubts, having similar doubts, get resonated with Radhika or what Ashni has said, I think, as Radhika rightly said, the motivational factor get exponentially high. So Radhika, some more stories from you. I think from the
totally agree with you that most of our companies, I think we heard from Priya, Ashwin, everybody, are doing great. Certainly making that commitment public will keep driving more motivation. Now, on that aspect, I think I agree with you that we have more opportunity to do some publicity here. To Priya's point, in terms of companies Are they doing it like a checkbox, or they're making a real commitment? I'm really proud to tell you that this year Micron has globally announced that diversity and inclusion goals are part of IPP goals now. Now you don't have a choice, right? It's publicly we said your individual performance incentive depends on how well you perform on both diversity and inclusion. There are a set of trainings that everybody has to go through, all men and women has to go through, and then there are a set of programs. I mean, we have goals at every level. Entry level, how much you're hiring so that your generational diversity is taken care. Women at all levels, again, we have goals there. And then at the same time, at promotional, at identifying right talent, including board. At all levels, every leader gets measured on their diversity commitment. Now, this has to go into public, because companies, I have heard in past when I was part of NASSCOM committee that this was a discussion where people couldn't take call, right? Now I'm putting this goal into IPP. Now company has to take a criticism. Now it's a big, bold move, but we have taken that, right? That's at a company level. I think this can go a little more public. Now at each team level, I think one other aspect that kept coming, the fact that we are half of, in India, at least half of the team is engineering and remaining half is IT. In IT, as we already heard, we have a reasonably good representation. I have 33%, so which is not bad. I have a room to improve for sure. But even within IT, some of the areas like, let's say cyber, my cyber team is not as much women heavy. And so infra team is not as much heavy. Engineering, as you can imagine, is not that heavy of women. Now, in these pockets where we have less women, where and my manager, in case my manager is not a woman, then there are challenges that these women go through on a daily basis. Let's say an engineer who is sitting in a lab with a high with a completely extreme low temperatures, right, and standing and doing verification and validation for a long hours. Now during monthly cycles, they have challenges. They can't stand as long. Now what do? They need a leave, but then they have deliverables to do. They can't talk to the manager. So this is where we are piloting small little program called Sakhi. So this program actually identifies a group of people who are empowered to take those decisions of granting leave up to 1 to 2 days. Again, within the sick leaves, we have enough sick leaves, right? It's not about having leaves. It's about empowering somebody to take the call. So now the fact that the Sakhi are set of women leaders, who are senior women leaders who are available, we publish their numbers for everybody, any other woman to reach out. So my manager is a man. I can't tell him about a PCOD problem or a monthly cycle problem. I have cramps. So this person can pick the phone, talk to this person, and then this person is empowered to take the leave. And then this Sakhi member will go and talk to the manager and then explain the situation. Now it makes it easy for a team member to kind of deal with some of these challenges. So these are small ones, but then I'm hoping that these go a long way.
No, very nice. I think Sakhi, Suraksha, I think very relevant programs which are definitely coming up. We have few questions already pouring in, but a lot of, what you called thumbs up for what Priya said to what Ashwini said in terms of the actual examples. I think people are really enjoying what exact examples are coming. So Neha, one question has come. Basically, the question is that once a person is coming back from, let's say, maternity leave, there is always that slight amount of insecurity or fear factor or anxiety. What an organization should do in order to onboard that person and welcome them even more and integrate them, because you gave an example of your AVP. Right. So what exactly is small things which can be done to make that person completely integrated and included in the overall system?
Right. So that's actually a great point. So I think it starts from the top down. So as a top down, you have to sensitize their managers that, this is something that they have to be cognizant about. So for instance, if they are having some people might be having, some other commitments, some other, emergencies, their managers have to be very cognizant. So I think, one of the ways in which it can be done is more top down, that you actually talk to their managers, make sure that they are taking due care of it, they are sensitive about it, they are not very they are not sort of ignoring it and treating it as as usual. They're still talking to the other person, making sure that the initial 1 or 2 months is basically smooth. Because if for whatever reason, if that initial 1 or 2 months is not very smooth for the person, then they might decide after some time that maybe they cannot take up this responsibility, and let me do something else, otherwise I'm doing a compromise. So how do you basically make sure that they don't themselves feel that they are taking a compromise in their family, and yet they are also able to do this? So I think in our case it's more sort of top down and talking about it in the meetings explicitly. We mention, we talk about all these points.
Got it. Got it. Manmeet, you and Priya, are very distinguished in terms of diversity and inclusion professionals. In your peer group, right? You are also having a community of other professionals in other companies. And I want to be little brutal about this checkpoint kind of approach, or because the entire CSR law or initiative that organizations have to spend this much, sorry to say, the data which is coming up, unfortunately, I feel a big opportunity has been missed, where some of these CSR programs should have been curated in a way that actual problems could have been tackled. How do you ensure while designing these programs, they are just not check in the box or meeting your global requirement like PhonePe, Flipkart, Walmart? These are not the programs which are just being run to, so-called please the galleries. And, is there a conscious discussion which happens between the peer level, I'm saying HR and diversity groups and others, that are we doing enough in terms of making sure that, we are going back to our directors? Because HR role or a legal role many times is seen as a fulfilling kind of a role, or, this is the goal, see that. But what extra steps are being taken to go back to the business leaders and push them that XYZ is not to be done only as a check in a box? It is actually done as a meaningful program. And this is the data which we are driving and the end results. Because Priya and I think Radhika clearly mentioned, programs are getting started, but the net effect or the efficacy of these programs is something we need to see and bring back again to the storytelling, that A was launched, B was implemented, and C is the result. And this is the net effect of which has happened.
So I probably have a slightly different perspective on all of this. I am a huge fan of being able to think systems, being able to think holistic. One of the big reasons I joined PhonePe was because as an organization, it was an organization that deeply cares about being able to build the right people systems. It was when I joined, in fact, for the last 2 years, we have not necessarily done anything specific around diversity and inclusion, because we felt that as an organization, we were not ready to tackle those issues, or we were not ready to kind of get to a solution to those issues. For us, it is important to make sure that the foundational elements are put in place in the right way. We have not taken on any goals that are check in the box goals. We have not done, we will not do anything that is to look good in front of anyone else, because for us, the most important stakeholders in all of this are our people. We don't need to, even today, we don't need to say that we are doing anything around diversity and inclusion. We are a 5-year-old company. We can well say that, oh, we've got all of these business goals. CSR goals don't apply to us. We don't yet make money. So for us, if we want to do anything, it is because we believe it is the right thing to do. It is something that we believe we can influence and impact. We have as an organization around 7,000 people who are out in the field, helping us ensure that across the country, retailers, 70 million retailers are able to actually use PhonePe. We have a headcount today of about 2,500 people. And there are multiple accesses across all of these where we can, in fact, make a relevant difference to people's life, whether it is in terms of being able to influence the socioeconomic levels of comfort that people have, whether it is around ensuring that diversity and inclusion from a gender or sexual orientation perspective becomes something that we are able to provide welcoming environments for, or whether it is in terms of how we think about people with disabilities and how those can have a more fulfilling role within the organization. These are things that we believe we have the opportunity to nudge the system on, to move, to make forward momentum on. We believe that a starting point for us, as you might have seen, is to say that, okay, women in leadership, we think that if we commit to increasing the number over there, that will create those role models for us to be able to do some of the ground level work we'll have to do. We believe that if we are similarly able to make a difference in terms of how we are able to create the welcoming space for the LGBTQ population, we may be able to change the conversation that's happening in those spaces. As a company that is, again, available across the country and is in a position to maybe change attitudes, not just in a place like Bangalore or Bombay, but also in places like Raipur or Nasik and so on and so forth. So those are the areas that we as an organization consider important for us to influence. And those are the areas where we as an organization are very committed to make a difference. How we influence others in the community, in the HR community, or in the diversity and inclusion community, I think for us, it's only going to be role modeling based. We'd like to be able to do things and then demonstrate that this is how you can do things in a way that actually makes a difference. And not really in terms of necessarily from a just a conversation perspective. It is in some ways also too early for us to do the conversation because we've just started, so we have to be able to demonstrate some results before we get there. But fundamentally, as an organization, for us, this is about creating those right environment and those right spaces to be able to make those changes and identify what might be those 2, 3, 4 powerful nudges that will get us there. And that's kind of how we are looking at it.
Thank you for such an honest answer. And, and that's why I'm loving this panel, because the honest brutality, the brutally honest answer. If we are not doing, we are not doing, and there is no point in what we are doing, like Ashni and Radhika has given example, Priya has given example, and Neha has said in their boardroom level what they are doing. And I think that's what, if we step back and see what is coming here, is a very potent example. I will also like to bring an example of a company which Neha and I have seen in Sequoia ecosystem. It is called Win Greens. To what Priya said, connecting with the families, going to the things. So it's a small company which got started. I think we all are beneficial of their beautiful chutneys and all the papads and things which are getting generated. But if you go back, the founder, who had already achieved everything in her life, and her husband decided to adopt a village outside Gurgaon on the border of Haryana. They said that we want to take 30 women and they will be our first workforce, because who can make better chutneys than women? Again, not unconscious bias. I know my friends, male friends, who are also cooking. I'm also dabbling into it, so not into that. And they made a study on that village before approaching the village. The study clearly shared one simple thing, that the female mortality rate or the girl child mortality rate was higher in certain areas in that, and what could be done in order to take the the situation of the women in that village into a different level. So they said that we will give these many benefits to the village panchayat. So the first package which was coined was for the village panchayat, and it was very clearly said that whether it is wells or whether it is giving minimum technical knowledge on the agricultural side, they will bring it to the village. Then second thing they did, because in that village, none of the women can go out without having a full parda, because that was sarpanch. And, thankfully in the panchayat, one woman panchayat member is important. That was the issue which was raised, that how will they come out of the home without this thing? So female trained drivers and sumers were organized to pick up these women from their doorstep at the home. They were taken to a factory position, which was manned all by women, which is like 15 kilometers away, because the machinery which was required to make some of these ingredients was not there in that village. So, first experiment, then second village got associated, third village got associated. Today, there are thousands and thousands of female workers, women workers, which are coming from there. And the recent study said in those villages, they are earning 3x more than the respective male member in that community also. The education rate has gone. Now, schools are getting created in and around those vicinities. And, the impact statement of that particular initiative which got started is so deep. So I think when I step back and I see empowerment, I see all the ingredients which are there, giving financial support, giving upskilling, giving safety measures, creating that holistic work environment, and working with the, the patriarchal system, and breaking the, the so-called barriers and boundaries which are there, and doing it in a place which, sorry to say, is, renowned or infamous for, the largest amount of female mortality rates. or girl child mortality rates is something which is, being done incredibly well, because this is the toughest standard which can be done. So I think the last section, we will try to limit it to total 6 minutes, because I've been given to understand, we are getting out of the time. Let's 1 minute from each one of you. If you have to design an empowerment model using these factors, whether it is education, upskilling, economic thing, what is the best way to design it? And, again, what we are hearing here is very good, but when it gets translated at the grassroots level, so maybe a quick plan from your side. All of you are leaders and strategists people. So let's try to put a plan. Priya, what will be your plan?
So for me, I think one thing, if I were to design, or if I was a part of a design to create an program to empower women at the lower part of the pyramid, one is, of course, use fundamentals of design thinking to actually include and integrate the women for whom we are actually making this, to see what works for them, right? So definitely the method would be something as potent as design thinking. Secondly, I think upskilling and employability would be two pieces that that I would marry along with the sociocultural change. Again, this is my perspective. I don't know. When I ask the women over there and do it through design thinking, it just might turn out to be something completely different. So I will believe in that process and go with what they would want to empower themselves. So that's all from my side.
Very good. Radhika, what will be your plan? Upskilling and, getting the feedback from the people and designing a plan is what Priya said. What will be your plan, and what are the ingredients you will put into it?
Sure. Sandeep, first of all, I want to thank CEO Influence of iConfluence team to make me think. In last few days when I was trying to make some notes around, okay, what am I going to talk? And then you don't believe, just this morning, I sent a note to one of our government affairs leader who also leads our community and outreach also, in terms of coming up with an idea of creating a micro community, right? A micro community as such is not a new concept. Government has done it and many companies are doing. But the idea that I came to my head, and I think I'm going to drive strong about it, is creating micro community within a corporate sector, as in we have 100+ support staff, right? Again, supported by Ashwini, so a sector of ISS and other segments. We have 100+ support staff, and many of them are seeing the role models, right? They're seeing all the women engineers. They're seeing us doing good job. Now, role models is not a problem here. Here, the problem is the true support for them, right? Too often when we hear in washrooms the stories of, hey, my daughter has done intermediate, but then now I don't know, madam, what do I do? Right? We hear, and then I think we have not created enough forums, right? That's where I wrote a note, and I'm going to, again, drive this strong, is create a micro community where I think we can provide a environment, maybe ecosystem, right? Be it a web portal, technology aspects combined together, and then putting a panel or a community which will review these requests coming in from our own support staff and providing them necessary education, and then providing an upskilling opportunities, etc. So next time when I come to this panel, I am very positive that I will have an outcome coming from that micro community.
Awesome, awesome. So micro community, designing a customized program based on need.
Staff, yes.
Neha, what
just Sandeep, just to extend, it's not just to limit support staff. Rather, I'm thinking that we will extend to our employees also, because if our employees would have watchmen or maids who would have children who are eligible, but then they can't go anywhere. These are direct hitting the ground problems. You review that request coming in, and then fund it appropriately, get going. So that's going to
make a lot of sense. Micro community, and I think. When I talk to various, organization and the employees, many times they are saying, where can we also contribute? Because like Radhika, like Ashni, there is a story running across every person who is coming on board in an organization, collecting these stories, maybe in a small curated micro community, and then spreading it across. I think it's a brilliant idea. Neha, how are you guys thinking through? Because you are growing rapidly now, multiple countries, your product is expanding. So how are you thinking on some of these programs?
Right. Right. So actually, there are two things that that I feel are super helpful. So one is basically talking about more stories, right? How did this person do that? How is this person managing, work along with home or work along with kids? How are having a 2-year-old along with managing responsibility? So bringing out those stories. So one is just that, which is kind of role models or personal stories. So that is one key thing. And the second thing is there are 2-3 points at which the drop off happens more in the workspace, at least. For instance, when a female gets married and they move to say another city, or childbirth is probably the other point. Then at these couple of points, when typically the dropout, there's highly likely chance of a dropout happening. How do you as an org make sure that the transition is smooth? Whatever people decide, that's fine, but you as a workforce ensure that all the other things and the software elements are also taken into account, so that at least the whole transition is smoother, so that people are more encouraged to believe the fact that they can actually do both.
No, very nice. But Neha, one question, and maybe this is a technology question. Why there's not data science coming behind these initiatives, right? Stories are there and still those stories get lost because tomorrow or Monday we'll be back into our own things. But why these actual impacts, and how from a tech point of view, it can be, spread out on forums and people can actually resonate on that also.
Right. Yeah. So I think that is more at the top level. I also see, I see at least things are going in a positive direction. We still have a lot of miles to cover, for sure, but at least people are talking about those. So for instance, right now, even our board members have actually asked us, what is the percentage of, male versus females? Those questions weren't being asked probably, 5 years back. So people, top down are taking a conscious thing and asking, okay, in your senior management, what is the percentage? Companies are themselves sort of declaring these things, in their, as part of their financial performance. In addition to that, all these other matrices. So I think that is one interesting thing that I see. At least there's a conscious effort. Obviously, we still have a lot of miles to cover, right? Like we still have the female in leadership, female in any of the VP CXOs is still, there's a lot of mile to cover. But at least I see that people have started talking about it, tracking those matrices. Earlier, people didn't used to know that these are the matrices that they have to even report. Right now, there's more encouragement of companies to report these matrices, so that then over some time it also becomes ingrained in your hiring, in the other kind of policies.
No, very nice. And Manmeet, in your opening remarks, you touched upon a topic which is still till then, at the back of my hand, on the financial inclusion, right? And empowering them on the financial. I think the data, the X amount of salaries being generated, let's say in PhonePe, 300 female workforce is there, amounting to, let's say, 1 million INR into salary. So what are the other measures where these efforts which Priya mentioned, Radhika mentioned, Neha mentioned, Ashni mentioned, can be quantified also? Because I believe when there is a quantification, of course, we will never forget the softer aspects and all. But I think time has come to say that, for example, Supreme Court in January has come up with a beautiful judgment, and I will pass it on to you. Yesterday, when Deepak and I spread it that this so this forum is going to get together and we are going to talk. One of our neighbor resident in Windmills created this small judgment where Supreme Court has said, while calculating the eligibility of a housewife, what premium, what damages should be allotted to her in an insurance fire case, what is her employability and the ratio. Supreme Court has said that women who are doing, taking care of the families, who are homemakers, are actually putting in these many hours of work. And if they were getting employed parallelly in an industry, this is what they would have generated. So Supreme Court has done a fabulous job in trying to first time make a quantification of the contribution made by homemakers and come up with the data. So when we are designing programs from an organization point of view, how we can make it more quantified and, in terms of sharing that the financial inclusion is actually not only being done on paper, it is actually being shown. And any ideas and thoughts around that?
Just to make sure I understand your question, you're talking about the fact that if there are women in the workforce, they are being paid a salary, and so therefore there is a percentage of the value to the GDP that is coming from women. Is that kind of what you're?
Yes, that is one factor. Other to ensure that when they are joining, there is no pay discrimination. That is another factor which can come out from the various things. So what are these initiatives which can be designed around the quantification of the actual practices which is being happened?
So I think, and this is something that we've thought about quite a bit, even in my previous role at Amazon. So I think there are multiple different things that go into it. Financial output, so to speak, is probably a very, very small component of that entire infrastructure that goes into something like this. For example, I might say that in X company today, the average woman is paid at 50% of what the average man is paid. But that tells me actually nothing, because it might simply be the fact that all of the men are in senior roles while all of the women are at entry-level positions. Nobody is advocating that there should be a standard similar salary for everyone. We're very specifically saying that for roles that are comparable, compensation needs to be similar. And that again is a complex factor. I was talking about systems thinking earlier. It is about ensuring that starting salaries as an organization we keep at the same bar. It is about saying things around how, to what extent is your compensation that you pay to an individual based on their last drawn salary versus what you would consider a fair salary for, let's say, person starting out in this role or person at a senior level in this role or whatever else. So taking away the negotiation element from some of these things helps ensure, again, from a nudge perspective, to reduce the amount of variability that you might have. How much control am I going to give to somebody who is coming to me every second day and saying, hey, I need a salary increase, versus somebody who's just quietly doing the job that they have and being paid whatever the role is worth. So some of those are more fundamental things in being able to, again, specifically talking about making sure that compensation for people in the organization is fair. Definitely doing a compensation review analysis to make sure that at a role level, the comparisons are equitable. But then also ensuring that you're creating pathways for people to move into higher paying roles. Again, at Amazon, we'd actually designed a program that was focused on saying that if a lot of women engineers, for example, happen to be in support engineering roles or quality roles, which are relatively lower paid versus your full-fledged software engineering roles, how do you create those transition paths for people to move into those positions? So that's a much more systematic way of kind of looking at saying, okay, yes, there is a gap, but there is a gap for good reasons. How do we make sure that value is being created at similar levels? And the second is to kind of take away, to whatever extent, the systematic variations that would come in, because some people are going to be negotiating. Some people are going to be looked down upon because they are negotiating. And some people are just going to get the benefit of being able to be the loudest voice and get what comes from that. So those might be 3 or 4 things that I would think of specifically to handle the compensation variation that might be coming in.
Again, very nicely put. And I think, what is required is even empowering them to say that, yes, it's okay to negotiate at a right point of time. And it is okay to ask certain questions during your appraisals and thing. And I've again, not trying to, put it into any bracket, but I've seen our, men as when they are negotiating, they feel a little bit more empowered to do that. But, making some small programs that during HR sessions, these kind of questions are okay to ask. You are not going to be, treated separately if you're raising things, because many of my friends, they come back and they say, oh, I feel very hesitant even to ask a raise for myself and all, and I do it. But I think small programs in empowering specific this piece of it, I feel is a big need around.
So the thing is that you can't actually just leave it to people, to individuals, because these are systematic things. If my male colleague asks for a raise, he might get it. If I ask for a raise, I might just be told that maybe this isn't the right job for you. There are documented instances of this happening. So you can't simply tell people that, hey, that fellow's asked, you also ask, because the consequences to me for asking are very different from the consequences of asking for him. So that's why some of these things we have to also handle systematically and not just say, hey, you do what that fellow is doing and you'll get the same results.
No, I agree. And therefore I was talking about the system because Priya mentioned that in these seminars, focus on educating male colleagues is also equally important. That, hey, are you even aware this unconscious bias? Like, for example, the new ad is coming, easy ride. And my wife pointed out why only a secretary has to be always a female. She's standing for a boss to come on a bike. And, secretary is standing with a coat which boss who is coming on a bike, not in his car, will wear. She said, why always? And that was said that one question hit me very hard. And I think absolutely systematic programs, but designed of inclusion. I think the knowledge and the capacity building has to be done at all the points so that these questions are okay to be asked, and it should be also addressed accordingly from understanding the background. So Ashni, this Suraksha thing which you said is very nice. What are the other programs that you guys are thinking through which will help in empowering people?
So, like I said, there are different programs, and of course, the programs are also for various levels of so leadership levels are there, supervisory level. But here we are specifically targeting on the bottom of the pyramid. So, what we are trying to do is, we have a program called as refer her. So, if a lady colleague, even if she refers a lady, so we want, if it's a small job that she's doing at an entry level, but can she refer, because there are referral programs which are running, but can she refer consciously, or a male colleague, can he refer consciously a female colleague? Okay. Second is, like I said, the work that is happening is more on changing the mindset. So that is something which is going to take a long time, because we have, as I said, our job is more on our client premises. So the client says, yes, we want the ladies. Okay. Why? Because we find them, and sorry, but no offense meant to any men here, but they find them to be more focused, they find them to be more punctual and hardworking, all that is there. But they feel that, okay, they cannot do certain level of job, or they find them incapable. So the mindset even of our customer, not only of our own employees, but even of our customer, can we have? So a point which really is made by Priya again on having all females hotel, can I have, my customer or an account where I have all ladies, having work there. Another point which you mentioned, where a village has been adopted. So our job is such that where we can work on such initiatives. So this was of course we have not thought about it, but I think this is a thought process which we can definitely have. And if my country manager is on this call and he's listening to me, definitely why not adopt, village, because we are working in a lot of interior places. So we can give an employment to this level of people. So I think there are many more. Again, if we get time to discuss that, we'd definitely like to discuss more such points.
I think I can't say any more. I think wonderful points have come through it. Everyone has obviously prepared very nicely for this thing. And I think this is one topic which I can say very safely, each one of you, not only, are preaching it, you are practicing it. It is way deeper in all of you. So I just to summarize, I think 3-4 things which have come up, that storytelling is a very important thing. All the stories are coming out. Actual dollars are getting spent to create those stories. And we have stories like Radhika, Neha coming up and, also spreading the message. The point is, like this micro community concept, which Radhika said, how to connect and, keep, flushing out these stories more into the ecosystem, and then trying to translate it at a grassroots level, that is story ka matlab ye hai aur aise ye ho sakta hai. And you want to talk to Radhika or Neha or to Priya or to Manmeet, this is how you can actually go and do it also. That is, I think, one brilliant idea which is coming up from here. And I think designing a customized program, because each problem is different, and how you design that program, rather than say, okay, upskilling, education, as Priya said, understand the problem, ask them what are their problems, and design a program around that. I think that is important. And I think third thing is going back to the organization and saying them that these programs have to connect at the grassroots level, and we need to constantly monitor the results. I think those are the 4-5 takeaways from my side. And Deepak, over to you.
Sandeep, extremely heartening conversation, and I can only say it's been a delight to hear each one of you. And Sandeep, beautifully moderated. I keep saying that it's not easy to moderate a conversation on a digital platform, but you did a great job. And also great to know that 60% of workforce at Elgo are female members. I think that's pretty good to know that. And Priya, thanks for pointing out the formation of our earlier panels. And I'm sure after today, our ratio will get a little better. But I'll tell you, I must give credit to the women in the way they're managing their career, they're managing their families. I think they deserve a huge credit out there. And probably that's one of the reasons that they don't get time to be on a conversation on a Saturday morning. But we will surely keep your point in mind. One of the takeaways that I probably got out listening to this conversation is that the inclusive leadership is what is needed today. And it's very important to bring the perspective from diverse backgrounds and bring them into the system to create more clarity on where the problem exists, and that's where we'll be able to find the right solution onto the things. And friends, thank you very much. It's been a really a wonderful conversation. I look forward to meeting you all in person very soon, and probably have you on another conversation as well. And I can only end by saying that let's be more empathetic, let's be more authentic, compassionate, and inclusive in the way we manage people. So cheers, goodbye, and thank you very much again.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.